All right, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Thigh and Smy podcast and Bearski Film, also being streamed on Bears Country podcast channel. So it's being streamed on all three. And we welcome everybody tonight. Thank you for joining us because we have a very special episode because Virginia McCaskey and George McCaskey and the Bears organization have finally given us something that they might have never given us before. And that is a BJ. Dave, how do you feel about the BJ that we got today? Even coming from a 102-year-old billionaire, it's still a BJ, David.
A nice little gummy. One of my favorite jokes is that pizzas are like BJs. There's ones you like more than others, but none of them are bad. So I don't know. I'm pretty mixed emotions on this one. I think it's a net positive. The jury is still out. I think just like Caleb, we got to give Ben Johnson like 2 to 3 years. Let's be patient. But I mean, net positives for sure. We'll get into the details after the initial reactions, but it's definitely more of a plus than a negative.
Yes, sir. Carl, Nick, Thigh, and Smy. Thank you for finding the time to be able to do this tonight. Yes, we do love BJ, and that's right, everybody. Ben Johnson is
God bless you, Tony Moy.
Ben Johnson is the new Chicago Bears head coach. And so I know we've all discussed our different opinions on who we wanted. It was nice for the Bears to actually just pull the trigger and get this thing done. I think a lot of us were worried with all the candidates that they were interviewing that they just might wind up. You got to bring the picture back, Carl. They might wind up with Drew Petzing.
Let me drive that point home, though. So the Bears were so quick to act on this that literally in the post game of the Lions losing, Jay Glazer broke the news that the Chicago Bears were bringing in Eddie George. Yes, that Eddie George as a head coaching candidate the following day to satisfy the Rooney Rule, which is really fucking scummy, by the way. Here we are. Now we've got Ben Johnson, who is literally able to be signed today. It's as soon as it happened. The pen ink is not on the paper yet. It will happen tomorrow. But with how much pressure there's going to be on him for him to retract on this, I'd have to assume, and that's why we're live now, it's a done deal.
Yeah, Carl, I thought it was a disgusting example of exactly why people hate the Rooney Rule. I don't know, Nick, what do you think about it? I mean, it was just... It cut and dry. Like, okay, we need an African-American candidate as fast as possible.
Like as obvious as possible. When immediately they saw, you saw Eddie George come in as the head coach candidate, being interviewed in person. A lot of people didn't know he was going to be in person, and then they ended up confirming that. I mean, it's a sick rule, I mean, you saw the Patriots do it. They brought in Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich in person, and then they hired Vrabel the day after. I mean, teams are just going to try to satisfy it just to get to who they want, which sucks. But I mean, it's a rule that's going to have to get rectified at some point. It's got to get changed in one way or another. I don't know how it can get any better. There's really no way of bettering that. I mean, at the end of the day, the better candidate's going to get hired.
I'm sorry, I just found this out real quick about Eddie George. He was like a summer training camp, like Bears.
Yeah, he was there. He was at the Bears training camp. I remember that.
So not only that, it was very like, hey, dude, like, you want to do us a favor?
Yeah,
you want to come in and interview so that like we can just be compliant, and which made it, I feel like, makes it a little bit worse. But I mean,
yeah,
whatever.
It does. I mean, it does.
I'm pretty sure the Rooney Rule only applies to head coaching positions. I think
so.
Maybe
and GM positions,
and so it does have a fault in the way it's being used, and I do think maybe though applying it to even lower level coaching, even though it's still a shitty way of doing it, it still might actually help some of these coaches get jobs to then become, then be put in position to actually be real candidates for these head coaching jobs instead of being these, random interviews.
I mean, you never know. A team might be blown away when they bring someone in. They're like, oh shit, this guy actually knows what he's talking about and has a good idea. It's possible. We really haven't seen it happen yet, though.
Let's get back on topic, though. Ben Johnson, guys, and then Black Rain 7920 comments that Dennis Allen might be the defensive coordinator. I know David was. I think it's. I'm okay with that. I know David was. I don't think you were too happy about it, but I mean, the guy was a defensive coordinator for 6 years on the Saints. So
Right,
he's
and
got plenty of experience. in that category.
The key here too, along with Dennis Allen, the Bears might be bringing in Darren Rizzi as their special teams coordinator.
Yep.
Both of these guys have direct or indirect head coaching experience. I think Rizzi only was the interim this year. But I think it's a really good idea to surround a first-time head coach in Ben Johnson with as much talent at that coaching staff as possible.
I mean, having a previous head coach helps. I mean, he wasn't great, but that experience is going to help him in the long run, and in one way or another. I mean, Dennis Allen, he's kind of like an Eberflus to me. Yeah, the Falcons are interviewing Eberflus. He's a great DC. He's not a good head coach. It's just the way the water boils sometimes, man. I mean, he's led a top 10 defense the past 5 years.
And the key, Nick, the Bears don't have to uproot their system.
It's the
They're going to be a
system.
4-3. The players will be where they want. Now, I know me and Dave have talked about this. I want the Bears to play man coverage when it matters. I want Jalen Johnson on the best wide receiver when it matters. Things like that. So if that's what we're going to get out of it, Dennis Allen, the Bears have the talent. I've always thought that the Bears had a really talented defense, and we all thought that. That's why we retained Matt Eberflus. Obviously, Matt Eberflus chose to not be a good head coach, all that good stuff. But it's going to be really interesting moving forward, and I'm really excited, especially for this offense too.
I have everything about Ben Johnson I can give you a positive and I can give you an equal negative. And with Dennis Allen, it's like you guys said, he's a upgraded version of Matt Nagy in the sense of he's a little bit more aggressive. He's been doing it a longer amount of time. He does run a similar scheme where
Nagy
we're
or
talking about
Eberflus?
a 4-3.
You mean Eberflus?
Eberflus, I'm sorry. All these fucking Matts and these stupid names are going to merge. But like Dennis Allen, he's running a 4-3 with an under-talented roster in the Saints for 6 years, and he's doing a decent job. It's what we've been asking Eberflus to do for a while. So the other part of that is he's had head coaching experience. Now, he's done a terrible job. Dennis Allen was literally the only guy neck and neck with Eberflus for the most obvious head coaching firing in the NFL. So the positive is that, yes, you're having a guy who gives you a little bit of like a Vic Fangio vibe, where it's like a guy who can take care of his side of the ball all on his own. He doesn't need your help or your influence too much. Obviously, there should be some input there. But at the same time, it screams a little bit of Nagy with the Island of Misfit Toys, where it's just a bunch of fucking dudes who got fired, including Ben Johnson, where we're talking about Nagy, guys like, I'm sorry, Eberflus. Joe Brady's still in the playoffs, right? Like, say what you want about Joe Brady being 35 years old, and I get that and all that good stuff, but Joe Brady is still in the playoffs. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are not. So you're taking coordinators that, are good, and I get that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Don't do it.
I'm just saying, like, it screams a little bit like, if you're talking about straight parallels, guys, like it screams Nagy. Like, does it not?
Eberflus?
Like, everything so far.
No. Matt
Eberflus,
Nagy did not rescue his head coach and the Detroit Lions when, for all intents and purposes, Dan Campbell was on his way to getting fired. 2 years into that cycle, he was on his way to getting fired. In comes Ben Johnson. Statistically, it's the best offense that the NFL has seen from that point moving forward, right? And he did that with Jared Goff.
Yeah,
So,
Matt Nagy didn't call plays very often. When he did give up a pretty bad lead.
No, Matt Nagy had literally one turn. I'm not gonna like draw direct parallels here. But with Dennis Allen, and can somebody remind me about the special teams coordinator? It's Darren Rizzi. Where is he from?
Saints. He was the interim for the
yeah,
Saints.
he was thrust into the head coaching role as interim when Dennis Allen was fired.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, yet again, I mean, as Darren Rizzi being like, I don't know, man. Like, we're taking good coaches off of bad teams. Like, that might work out, and that has worked out. And here's the thing: like, as much as I'm drawing a negative parallel to like a Matt Nagy type of influence, like Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury were former head coaches that were absolutely fired in disgrace, and then got a second chance and just reinvigorated an entire franchise very quickly. Like, I get it. It's an experience thing. But from everything I garner from like Washington, it's much more of a top down. It's Adam Peters and all the things that he's kind of promoting within that organization, and like being intertwined, where this is, to me, it screams a little bit more of the same, where George and Kevin Warren, I mean, from the reports of like everything that's initial with Ben Johnson, it's like they're agreeing to take a step back, letting Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson kind of run the show. But there's no structural or organizational change. And that's where that's the difference between successful places that retool like this and places like the Bears. So I don't know. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I said, I have a lot of positive to say for everything that I have that's negative. But I'm like, it's a net positive for sure. At the very worst, it's like 60-40. So I don't know. You guys can continue.
So, we got the BJ, but it's just the start of the job, guys. We still got to see this thing through. It's going to be hard work. It's not going to be easy.
Paul, we've got to reach the climax, right? We've got to climax.
Have this thing splatter all over.
I haven't even begun to peak.
No, we want it to splatter all over the place.
No,
we're just edging at this point.
Okay,
we're soaking, and George McCaskey's vibrating the mattress.
Yeah.
But in all realism, I know my top guy was Vrabel. Dave's top guy was Vrabel.
I think that was everybody's top guy.
No, not everybody's. Definitely not everybody's.
Maybe most. I'd say most.
It was the overwhelming majority.
Yeah.
No, so I did a poll on my channel, and the overwhelming majority did want Ben Johnson. Vrabel was the second. So it depends. It depends, but it depends, I guess, who you surround yourself with, right? But Ben Johnson, as much critique as I had for him, after Vrabel was off the table, start looking around, and it's just like, I really want a guy with experience.
Yeah.
However, it's not a bad move. I love Shorty's comment where he said, "I'm so pissed that I can't get excited right now. This team has given me so many black eyes.
Yeah.
Just don't trust them. They're going to beat my ass again."
It's more like I'll believe it when I see it.
Like I feel like a worm on a hook that's just being thrown into the lake over and over. And after the sixth time, I'm looking all decrepit, and you're just still shoving me right back on there, hoping to get a thing. And like David, you told me this earlier. You're operating off fear, right? So if we take that out of the picture, we just take today and moving forward, it's not a bad move. But if we're gonna,
I think it's a step towards change, though. Realistically, if we're gonna sit down and take a look at it from a different perspective, it's a step towards change. McCaskey pulled out his checkbook. I'm hearing that he's going to spend around 13 to 14 million on Johnson. I don't think 5 years ago that's happening.
Yeah, Nick, to your point, like Matt Nagy was not the overwhelming, desired head coaching candidate when he was hired. Mark Trestman definitely was not that type of person. This is a different type of move.
Era of football, though.
We're not abusing the Rooney Rule to go out of our way to hire the guy that everyone else wants. I can't remember the Bears ever doing that.
Right. It's fine. It's like they're finally playing football like everybody else is. They're finally stepping up to play modern football.
And hey, I know a lot of people.
Dave Wanstead. I think Dave Wanstead was the last time that a league wanted a guy that the Bears got.
That was probably before I was born. No, it was probably as I was being born.
Before I knew how to speak English. So
yeah,
there you go.
I think it's different from Nagy though, because I think he's going to pull people from the Lions staff. Nagy wasn't allowed to pull anybody from the Chiefs staff, so he kind of came over by himself and had to kind of get slim pickings of people from around the league. Yes, Johnson's getting Allen and Rizzi, but
before you assume that though, Nick, it's a highly unlikely. Only because
it might be highly,
with a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator being plucked out of the same team, like Dan Campbell's going to try to maintain some sort of version of consistency and all that stuff. But more than anything, so I'm gonna give you net positives, and then we can react to them negatively for sure. But so this is why I see so many two sides of the coin, but at the end of the day, it's always 60-40. So when you say oh, the change is coming and the change is coming, I don't see that. The only reason I say I don't see that is because I've seen George McCaskey go through his cycle, and me and Carl have made jokes about it where it's just defense, offense, defense, offense, defense, offense. And the only thing is I would say and that's what I mean by that. Yes, is it a positive that, and I said this with Caleb Williams, I don't give a fuck about what any fan base or any team says. If they had the first overall pick and they go oh, well, we thought Jaden Daniels was a better prospect and Drake May, shut the fuck up. Everybody would have taken Caleb Williams. And so sometimes, and as a Bears fan, this is what me and Paul said going into the draft. Stop trying to be the smartest guy in the room Do what everybody else probably would have done, and that's take Caleb Williams.
Mhm.
And granted, here's the issue with it, and that's why there's so many positives and so many negatives to every single thing I'm ready to say. The smartest guys in the room right now would have all taken Ben Johnson as their head coach, including Tom Brady, including the Raiders, including Shad Khan, including the Jacksonville Jaguars, including every single team that would have been interested because they were courting Ben Johnson. However, at the same time, the net negative, or whatever you want to call it, is you're competing with teams like the fucking Raiders and the fucking Jaguars for Ben Johnson. So it's like, unless you're praying that either team had a full culture shift thanks to Ben Johnson, you're in that category right now. It's Bears, Raiders, Jaguars. That's not fucking good company to be in. And we won the sweepstakes. It's like the fucking, it's literally Cartman in the Special Olympics. Like we won the tart off. Like, great job. Congratulations. And then that's why, like, Nick, when you say like, yeah, the winds of the change are blowing and stuff. Yes and no. Like, yes, it's important that the Bears were willing to spend some fucking money. Great. Congratulations. Like all I can do is give you a sarcastic clap for that, because it's a wind of change based on overcorrection, like George is willing to do. Good for us as Bears fans for bullying the fuck out of George McCaskey. That I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud that we bullied this fucking nerd. Like I full stop.
Sell the team. Sell the team.
Yeah. We bullied this fucking dork. However, same thing. It's like, I've said this with Carl multiple times. I've said this with Paul. Ben Johnson could have come into George's office, took a shit on his desk, and George would have overcorrected so hard he would have hired Ben Johnson no matter what. It's an overcorrection.
They would have put it in a box and framed it.
They would have framed the shit and then like put it in George's desk. However, I'm going to be consistent here. The consistent positive that I'm going to give them is the same way you did the right thing taking Caleb Williams and not being the smartest guy in the room. You did the right thing here and hiring Ben Johnson and not being like, well, we thought Liam Cohen was a better fucking prospect and Todd Monken would have been a better head coach. Like, you did the right thing. And that's my first of many, many points of why this is a net positive. But I've presented you guys with so many points where it's like, it's 60-40.
Right.
It's 60-40 positive. It's 40% negative. But there's so much that you could have really like said why this is good and why this is bad. But
yeah,